Exploring Healthier Masculinity Within Business, a monthly call for executive and senior leaders within industry who too rarely have a space to stop, to breathe, to take off the weight of being a leader of teams and organizations. Taking place on the first Monday of every month. Email gary.turner@radicality.co.uk.
Hello. Welcome to the next episode of In the Business of Healthy Masculinity with your host, Gary Turner. I hope you are doing and being well wherever you are in the world as you're listening or watching us today. I'm really excited to be bringing on my next guest. This is like episode 20 or something. Like, I can't believe this journey started just before Christmas 2025. And here is the wonderful Heather Hanson-Wickman. Hello, Heather. How are you?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for coming back. I think you're like one of the repeat offenders for my platforms, I think, over the years on that value through vulnerability and then other conversations. And you still keep coming back, Heather. I don't know why.
I love it. I can't help myself. It's just good conversations.
As we get going today, everyone, please check out Heather's website, which is beuntethered.co. As we get going, Heather, like for those that may not have met you before, I'd really love you to just brief introduction, but also sort of the work you're working on right now and why it's so important to you. I think those two things will be beautiful lenses for us to go exploring today.
Yeah. So those are ever evolving questions, right? So I'm going to do the best that I can to answer. So, what do I do? I think I've boiled it down just to I help leaders solve problems in very probably unique ways. So there's a couple lines of work that I do, and one is kind of the advisor, executive coach kind of space where I do help leaders think about kind of their own evolution and how do they evolve out of maybe systems and paradigms that don't feel to fit anymore. And we talk a lot about that, the control, the dominance, the coercion, to systems that are much more participatory and engaging and emergent. And so the book that I wrote, The Evolved Executive, is really all kind of based in that line of work. The other area that I play in, very nice.
There it is. It's the book for anyone that's listening.
Yeah. Having done this work internally like 12 years and now externally for almost 15 years, I've played with a lot of different tools and modalities. And the one that I keep coming back to, and it's probably because it's part of my life's work, is the work with horses. And so as it relates to the coaching work, there's some things that humans to humans sometimes can't address. And the horses come in a very powerful way because you can't lie to a horse. So there's ways in which when we get stuck from a coaching perspective or even from a design perspective, whatever it might be, horses can provide a new level of insight and discernment that can't often happen in human to human interactions. So that's the second line of work that I would say that I get to play with and dabble in and explore myself.
Wow. So intriguing. Now, although this isn't new to me, and I'm wondering if you're watching or listening back, if you come across this idea of doing work with horses, can you just give us a little bit more depth behind that? So let's just play it out. I'm a CEO, I'm a senior leader, I'm struggling with some problems to solve, or I'm worried about AI and what the impact's going to be on my workforce in 5 years' time. Whatever the thing is, like, how do horses help that particular leader expand their thinking, maybe look at things differently?
Yeah, so it does tend to circle around the specific problem that leader is trying to solve. So oftentimes it tends to be around uncertainty or leading my team through big change or trying to find my own leadership grounding in kind of this new, uncertain, volatile, space. And so depending on what the problem is, oftentimes we can have great conversations, you and I, about kind of the intellectual nature of what does this look like? And how can you begin to step into new and different ways of being or doing? Working with horses gives you kind of that unfiltered version or that practice ground. So let's say that I want to help, I need to get better at leading my team through big transformational change where I don't necessarily know where we're going. I know the next step, but I don't know 2 steps down the path. And so most leaders like to come into those situations with, the PowerPoint deck and the clarity and the certainty around this is the direction we're going, and I have the confidence that's needed to kind of move us in that space. we don't often actually have that. And I think our executive teams are getting sophisticated enough that they can kind of smell through that facade pretty quickly. And like, okay, so we're kind of going with you, but we also know that you don't really know exactly what you're doing. So horses then begin to come alongside that leader and help you understand, like, what is truth in your body, where's coherence in your body, where your mind and your body actually align, so that others can kind of align and go with you as well. Meaning, so there might be spaces where you need to drop into vulnerability for your teams to maybe feel more comfortable and more engaged and more confident in following the path that you've laid out. And your tactic of control and PowerPoint slides isn't going to work anymore, but actually dropping into a space of your body and breathing deeply and actually asking questions. So where you and I maybe can't get to that nuance to see what is the actual reaction when I change that, working with a horse, you can see an immediate reaction in the horse when you kind of drop the facade, drop the mask of I know everything, I know how this is going to go, and I can take a deep breath and get into my presence and actually come from a place of curiosity. So the horses are going to mirror that by engaging with you. And if you're in a place, if you still have the mask on, if you still are pretending, they're going to disengage, they're going to stiffen, they're going to mirror that kind of internal resistance. So I don't know if that was the best example, but horses are able to kind of mirror your internal state in a way that oftentimes you've never been able to see it before.
What that's like literally hit me like back, neck and shoulders.
Yeah.
I think because that is I just find it so intriguing that if we think about the hierarchy that we've been conditioned with, I've been conditioned with growing up right through education, through the world, certainly the last generations, Heather, it's always been that, that humans are above quote unquote animals, though we're animals as well. We've sort of disassociated ourselves as animals because we're seen as superior. Then you have animals, and you have other, you go down this sort of food chain almost in a way. And I really love that the work that you're doing, I know it's an unpopular word depending where you are in the world, but that equality of space, that equality of voice, that equality of feeling, that it seems to me that horses mirror, as you say, in us humans.
Yeah.
There's a real honoring and a chance for us to reclaim our humanity a little bit in that space, it feels like.
Yeah, especially when it's lost. So I think about the conversation here, even around healthy masculinity and potentially unhealthy masculinity. So I think about that as your right relationship with power. And so especially individuals who want to do the work to balance that, to create the right relationship in power as it relates to leadership and it relates to masculine energy. Horses, when you talk about it's like a honoring kind of space, horses maybe are the one creature that I see here in this space, in this world, that can do that without judgment. That they can bring us feedback, that they can bring us a mirror without shame, without judgment, but it's just real-time feedback. And you get to practice. So if you come into the space with control and dominance, horses are going to respond to that immediately by either fleeing, freezing, or fighting, right? And it's not a space of judgment. It's just a space of, I'm going to show you what's happening in your internal nervous system. And so it is this kind of, I would call it almost a teacher mentor kind of space, because they are actually showing you what you need to see that no one else can share with you in a way that has zero shame, zero judgment, because the moment you shift, they re-engage.
I've just got so many feelings and reflections on this, Heather. You look at you look at the macro, you look at the local, business spaces, of course, we're both in. That's the sort of basis of this podcast. But I'm curious to explore like the unhealthy bit,
Yeah.
So if we look at the world, whatever, it doesn't matter which country it is, it's in a mess. You look at the systems, look at the social systems, like things are falling away. And I would actually say it's probably necessary for something healthier to come through at some point. But I'm wondering how this work with horses can help leaders, but all of us actually heal somehow, because I think we're sort of in quite, and I don't mean like you have to have some wounded inner child. I'm about just literally trying to survive, to put food on the table, working 3 jobs as some people are. Like, the systems we're part of are unhealthy. They are designed to disseminate and make us into bits of ourselves, not come from that whole self.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how this work with horses can almost help build us back up again somehow.
Yeah. So I think there are 2 fronts, from a place of wholeness and then from a place of kind of reflection. So the work with horses oftentimes comes from, and if you do any kind of research or reading around it, it does come from this place of wellness, that a healthy herd. So we have 4 horses here that get to live exactly like horses live. So they've got freedom, friends, forage, space, all the things that they need. So in a healthy herd dynamic, there's a great degree of coherence, meaning there's alignment. And I'm saying that word a lot. I hope people kind of grasp what I'm saying, but alignment in kind of the being state and the lived actual space. And so the electromagnetic field of the heart is 5 times greater in the horse than it is the human. So they've been able to measure this in Heart Math Institute studies over and over and over again. So the human has about like an arm span of, electromagnetic span, and horses have 5 times that. And when you get a herd of horses in that coherent space, it's like 5 times that. So the first thing that tends to happen when someone walks into our herd is someone takes a deep breath. So whether it's one of the horses, whether it's the client, whether it's me, the energy just begins to kind of calm. So someone takes this big deep breath and things begin to settle. And when our nervous systems begin to settle, everything else comes online from a wellness perspective. So our heart rates go down, our cortisol levels go down, our intuition goes up. All of these things kind of just naturally happen in that space. And it's why sometimes brushing a horse can be one of the most therapeutic things that you can do. So when you talk about coming back to wholeness, sometimes I find that having individuals just go stand by the horse, just go breathe with the horse, put your hands on the horse and try to mimic its breath. People walk away with that and take a stand back and are like, I've never quite felt this calm before. So they come back to a sense of like that remembered wholeness in a way that maybe isn't possible in our chaotic, phone driven, deadline driven kind of world. So let me just pause there in saying that there is, I think, a space, and maybe more broadly in nature, that can help us all, bring those pieces back so that we can find ourselves again, remember ourselves again, and kind of come from that place of wholeness.
It's really potent for me, this, because someone that, as you know, I'm still operating in the corporate space, the chemical industry. So
Yeah.
one of the more challenging ones with sustainability objectives and ESG, and
Yeah.
got to grow the business and all that good stuff, which we're all used to doing. But why I find this conversation particularly interesting, Heather, is if I look at the archetype of the leader within my sector,
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't get more far away from what you just described in terms of coherence and wholeness.
Yeah.
Those leaders that I operate within and around 24, like sort of 5 days a week. Now, not because they're bad people. Again, no guilt, no shame here, but the system they're part of, what they've been brought up, the conditioning, the drive, and a lot of these people have got nice lives, right, Heather? And this is the paradox, right? If you're doing okay, got a house, kids going to school, you got holidays each year, that's seen as success, right? But you can survive in that paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
but blown apart into 1,000 different pieces that are disconnected.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just really curious how, like, as an invitation from your point of view, in a way, like, what does an invitation look like for a senior executive leader that works in that space where they don't have any real pressure or pain points apart from hitting the numbers, but inside they know that they're in 1,000 pieces, but they just don't know how or where to go to even start to bring that coherence back,
Yeah. So I would say 2 things. I know this work isn't for everyone. So there are people that are happy in the spaces that you've described and find a way to compartmentalize and manage in very relatively successful in successful ways. But what I would ask is, the thing that I work with most with clients is this analogy or this idea of highly successful but not satisfied, or but not healthy, but there's this nagging feeling. So I always ask folks to, even if they can't name that second part, like highly successful, like you said, on the numbers, I've got the salary, I've got the house, I've got the cars, I've got the kids, I've got the schools, I've got all the things. And there's still this nagging sensation, and it's lingering. So it ebbs and flows, right? It shows up in intensity, and then somehow I can kind of push it away for a little while, and then it'll show up a little more intensity, and then I push it away, but it doesn't leave. And so the first question is like, do you actually want to better understand that? Like, some leaders don't. It's a really uncomfortable place to dive into what is that nagging sensation, and what am I going to do with it? Is it going to uproot my entire life? And so those are some of the early conversations we have when people are like, I am highly successful, but I hate this. And those are strong words, but I've heard that. So I think it takes courage and recognition and kudos for one, just sitting with the question, and two, where do I go to explore this and better understand what this looks like? And the thing that I would say here is, it's baby steps oftentimes work better than giant steps, meaning even like To Tame the Tiger, Peter Levine's work around kind of trauma responses. And I do a lot of work with immunity to change. And so our ability to change is based on an internal immune system that wants to keep us safe, right? And so if we try to hit it too hard and too fast, your internal immune system is going to have like rejection, rejection, rejection. So oftentimes we have to entertain these conversations bit by bit and kind of titrate them. I'm not going to ask any client to like completely upend their entire life to understand what does it look like to be successful and satisfied. So I think, in a long-winded way, to answer your question there, for a leader that's kind of in that space, you got to ask yourself some tough questions. Like, am I willing to look under the shadow?
It's so helpful having this sort of non-human horse plus human discussion, because a lot of the conversation we've had so far, we're seeing similar patterns, Heather, right? So the patterns of, we can, particularly men, but all of us can come from a place of power, happiness, drive, success, less harmful, important point, when we are coming from that conscious place of dialing up and dialing down our masculine, feminine energy consciously. That's the point. So you realize you're hurting someone. Shit, I'm sorry. Let me take my foot off that. I realize I pushed you too far, Heather. Apologies. That's on me. Get on with the next thing. Rather than the Heather, oh, it's okay. I've got the right to do that because I'm the boss. Doesn't matter what Heather feels about that. Crack on. I'm going to carry on over here. And I just feel there's a real power that you're offering us. You're inviting us into with this sort of equine work, which is a safe space to do that uncomfortable, messy work of curiosity.
Yeah. And I love the attention that you're bringing to kind of this conscious practice. So I probably have the take, and maybe you do as well, that masculine and feminine energy resides in all of us.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
And I oftentimes work with very highly driven women executives who present much more with the masculine energy. And so we're oftentimes working with, how do you balance that? How do you find right relationship with the masculine energy, and when you need to pull in more of the feminine energy? And the conscious practice is the thing that is oftentimes the trickiest, because in the kind of the go-getting environment of most corporate workplaces, you're trial and erroring in every meeting, right? And sometimes that can be a little bit disastrous. And so if you have a coach, or if you have an opportunity to work with something like horses, where you can do that practice in a place that doesn't have the consequences, you're so much better suited to then go back to your team in a much more consciously practiced way. And so I love that you're helping leaders understand, like, it is a practice. It's something that you can learn, and it's something that you can begin to kind of build some muscle in, and you can begin to attune yourself to the reactions that you're seeing are in others as it relates to your behavior. And there's ways to do it where you don't have to put yourself in maybe a not so safe to try experiment in your day-to-day kind of team and organization.
It's so, I was going to say fascinating like a million times. Sorry, listeners, sorry, viewers, but it is fascinating. I also find it really interesting that you've mentioned remembering a number of times, and this has come up as another pattern through these conversations. And I'm curious what that means for you personally as Heather. Maybe you can share a story of your own remembering as part of this work into horses, or, you know, your own leadership journey.
Man, I think this is kind of a core piece. So we've talked in our previous conversations, and the book will talk to it as well, about what I thought success was. Yep. I don't mean to be pitching the book, but you can go there.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm literally, if you're listening, it's The Evolved Executive by Heather Hanson-Wickman, PhD.
Yeah. It is. So I grew up thinking that success was climbing the corporate ladder, and and I was super disciplined and super diligent on the milestones that I met along that path. What it looked like to meet a salary threshold and a title threshold in as short of a time as possible. By the time I was 32, I had hit those things in the way that I wanted to. I also had a failed marriage. I was depressed. I was overweight. I was anxious. I was all the things. But I was in a program, like I'm not saying it's bad, but it was what I was taught success looked like. And it probably took way too long, frankly, to enter that remembering phase, meaning this is all success. This all looks good. My friends, my parents, my colleagues are like, you're killing it. Way to go. And yet inside I was like, I can't do this. I tell you about my corporate crack. I quit my job in the middle of nowhere and sold everything and left the country for 3 months, right? I just cracked. And so that was the first phase of the remembering of what did it mean to exist here in this space with the gifts that I have to bring to the world in a way that's true and aligned with who I am, and not what someone else describes as what success looks like. So that's what remembering means to me.
Thank you for sharing so honestly. And I know it is in the book, but it's still, I know it takes something just to, because it's a feeling as well, right? It's in your body. That doesn't go away.
It doesn't go
that moment,
away.
because I have it, for those that may or may not have heard me say it on the platform yet. I'm, mine's 12 years ago, sitting down, working in just outside London. And I just literally hit a wall. I just literally completely hit a wall, jumped in my car, drove 3 hours down to the coast and spent 3 days staring at the sea.
Yeah.
And it's literally on day 3, I sat there just going, what is it? And and it was really weird. I had it like you, like had the salary, had the car, had everything I've been conditioned mattered. And I still call it to this day. And I remember the feeling so clearly. Spiritual bankruptcy is what it was for me.
Yeah.
Which was the first time I actually felt anything allowed myself to feel anything in my body, because I suppressed it and pushed it away for the first 35 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think this is an example of kind of internally expressed unhealthy masculine. So if I look at my scenario, I was driven myself by control, by dominance, by, frankly, probably some elements of greed to get to these specific goals of what success looked like. So I was operating out of a space of complete out of alignment from a masculine. It was all masculine, and not the sensing and emerging and intuition and what's trying to emerge here. It was just push that away, keep driving. And so I think there's, in this conversation around healthy masculine, I think there's an internally expressed healthy masculine and then an externally expressed healthy masculine. And I'm just thinking off the cuff here, but I think it probably happens where you have to internally get it right first before it can authentically come out externally.
Oh, I like it. I like where you're coming from. As you know, my failed book, Changes an Inside Job. I think I agree with you. Not a failed book. I just put it on the shelf. It might come back. But no, but I put, that is my experience though. That is
Yeah.
definitely, I would share that experience, Heather, that the outside world is generally a projection of your inner world.
Yes. Agreed.
It's definitely been my experience, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
The happier I've been and the more settled and trusting I've been of the process,
Mm-hmm.
the less difficult it's been to operate on the outside. Doesn't mean you don't have problems, doesn't mean you don't lose money or you have a problem with a loan that bounces, but just
Yeah.
your inner self, like that self-worth piece
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, maybe that's the point. Like your degree of inner self-worth directly projects, I feel, to how worthy you feel in the outside world.
Yeah. That is true. I like that link as well.
See, we're always learning, people. We don't have all the answers on this platform. We're just exploring. We're
Yeah.
just exploring. But I do please leave comments, like, share. I'd never say that on this podcast, but I know you're meant to when you're doing content, aren't you? Like, share, subscribe, or whatever they say. I don't even know. But I do want people to follow your work and get involved though, Heather. Beuntethered.co, because I know we've chatted about it for a long time. Tried to get me out there. I'm going to hold it. It's still got to happen at some point. I still want to come out. Colorado, isn't it? It's where you've got your
It
role.
is. It is. It is.
So yeah, we've got to make it happen at some point, my friend. I guess I'm just, as we go into the last few minutes, Heather, I'm just holding this tension. I'll be honest, it is a tension between this beautiful conversation and knowing in my body how important it is, the work that you're doing, and that we do need more people accessing that safe space with non-humans, with humans, and just feeling that it's so far away. Based on what's unfolding in the world, like today,
Yeah.
in February. But then I also challenge myself and go, but that's a very small microcosm. Like, that's less than 1% of the world that's happening with at the moment. There's 99% of us on the planet, right? That make up this incredible global community. And I just wonder, how do you tap? And it comes back to a question you challenged me with many months ago. How do you almost like tap into the nodal network? How do we help the masses understand that this is available, maybe than worrying just about whether leadership know it's available?
Yeah, I would agree, and I don't know if I have like a really great answer other than I trust that there's more of this work happening and more of these questions being asked than what we have access to, and I trust that, even the few questions we've posed will begin to spread. And in the work that I am doing, I know that there are leaders, and way more than I have access to, actually care about this and want to do leadership, this thing we call leadership, in a better way. And so both like self leadership as well as team and
Yeah.
organizational leadership. And it requires that we take a step back and ask different questions and are willing to kind of look at ourselves in a new light and in different ways. And I think it's, shining the light on these topics like you are, and asking people like, hey, take a look at this. What is it that you think, and what can we do individually and collectively to begin to shape a different way? And I think that's the beauty of our conversations, is that every time I leave, these things linger. How can I help shine more light on, it's not such a scary thing to take a look at what does a healthy masculine look like in comparison to where I stand today, or the feminine, and what would it look like if I made one small change? Because at the end of the day, I find that people are actually more fulfilled, more happy, more at peace inside themselves. And that can't help then spread to their teams, their families, their communities, their organizations. So it does take some courage, but I do think it's happening.
I love that. And I guess maybe a sort of shared commitment, me to you, you to me, us to each other, as you're listening or watching, is how do we share those stories more often? Because it'd be really nice to sort of uncover the non-front page of like Forbes. You know what I mean? Like, we've got some amazing people out there, like the Barry Waymillers, the incredible Gary Ridge, who's on episode 5 of this platform. There are some really standout examples of incredible leadership. But it's almost like, how do we get those sort of more everyday stories of the leader that's running a team of 5 in a
Mhm.
50-person company who's done stuff so radically different, and what the impact has that's been. Because I don't think we have enough of those sort of non-headline stories, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
So that's my mission after this conversation with you, Heather, is how do we uncover those stories? There we go.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Last word to you, my friend. Anything else you'd like to leave our listeners, watchers, viewers with?
I just thank you for your time. Time is a precious thing, and I hope that you were able to potentially take one thing from this conversation and sink into it and ask yourself a few different questions.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank
Until
you,
next
Gary.
time.